Thank you, Mary. Mary did not talk much while we were there. It was a great trip. Oh,
This is my other son, Mike, and my grandson, Cullen.
welcome. We're so glad y'all are here. I got to tell you guys, this was an incredible trip. If you can be a part of it, be a part of it. For me, this started, I'd have to tell you, 13 years ago, because I dodged the bullet for 13 years of not going. 13, was this the 13th trip? And for years, Kirk had tried to get me to go on this trip, and I got so many things going on in my life. I got business, I got all these things. I can't be gone 2 weeks, and you make all these excuses. This year, there was a meeting called up here in October. Ben Little, great guy, a preacher from South Africa, was there. Kirk, Ben, Philip Bailey was in the meeting. Terry was supposed to be there too. He couldn't be there that day. But it was sent out to all the elders that we were going to have a lunch, bring your own lunch type thing. I walked into that day at 11:30 in the morning, and Philip and Kirk and Ben were sitting there. And I thought, because I was not, I was right on 11:30. I didn't get there early. I walked in, sat down, and a conversation was going on, and I turned around to Philip and said, "Where is everybody?" And he said, "Everybody was notified." And I said, "Oh," and actually, when I walked in and saw it was just those three people, God was pressing on my heart, and he was telling me, I could just feel it. I knew where I was going and what I was going to be doing for that 2 week period of South Africa, and made that commitment. And when you really Mary mentioned being faith building. I can't tell you how faith building this was for me, in that from the moment I made that commitment and really threw myself down before God and said, okay, I'm going to do this. Help me. Show me what I'm going to do. Show me how I'm going to say it. God started just laying things out for me that I just, in your normal daily life, in my normal daily Bible reading, I've never been a huge person on Mark. Mark's a great book of the Bible. Don't misunderstand me. I love Matthew, all the details. I love Luke's my favorite book of love. I love John's my actual favorite. Luke, I like all the detail that Luke and the perspective it brings to it. Mark was always a little dry to me. But boy, not now. My entire presentation was made up of Mark 10, 11, 12, and 13. It's like God was just like whack, 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 telling me this is what you need to use as far as talking about church leadership. And so it was a great moment for me, not just now or at that time, but it's a great moment for me moving forward. This place was incredible. I got to tell you that we got there. We put our first presentation on Saturday after we arrived on Thursday evening, and we had Friday that we're interacting with the kids and the things at the school there. First presentation was on Saturday. Kirk had worked really hard to get it all scheduled. It was a big room presentation. Women were in one area, men were in this other area because the women's was more focused on the kids' teaching, as Mary talked about. We were talking about leadership. Some of us were. There were different facets that were covered. But Kirk had it set up for the big room, and he had a conference room. And I had it all in my mind. Well, I'm going to be in the big room first. Everybody will hear it. Then we can get in the conference room for the second session, and people can ask intimate questions about things that they saw, and we'll be able to talk about those. I get the schedule, and I look at it, and I'm in the conference room first. And so I'm thinking, oh, my goodness, they're not going to have heard this isn't working the way Frank wants it to work. And we get to the meeting, and I walked in the meeting in that conference room when it was the time for it, and there was only one guy sitting at the table. And I said, okay, Lord, I guess this is me and him, and this is what we're about. Just as we were about to start, the room filled up with 7 more people, and it was a close-by congregation, Davington is the name of the congregation, probably 300 or 400 people in that congregation. We sat at that table, and I was able to do that same presentation that I was doing in the big room also, but I did that presentation with that group. And there was more interaction and discussion, and these guys were stimulated, and they were saying, oh man, we got these ideas. And the main point of the presentation was leadership should be all about, just as Jesus said, he came not to be served, but to serve. And the first question he asked, like blind Bartimaeus, when he was walking along, and the first question he asked him was, what do you want me to do? What do you want? And I said, that's really what we are as leaders. And all these things just became crystal clear to me, but it started up, and you could see the excitement of these guys, and you can see the difference that it makes. Mary talked about the trip to Venda. Long bus ride, as Kirk said, but you get to see beautiful countryside in South Africa on the way there, and it was a wonderful place. Vinda, where it's located, the town that we were in and the congregation we were at, these people are not super well off by any means. I mean, it is they work for what they have, and they work hard at it. This congregation is 40 years old probably at this point, older. Probably goes back as old as this congregation here, probably to the 60s is where it goes back to, early 60s. And one of the gentlemen who was an elder there is 87 years old, and he said, we were standing outside before church started on Sunday, and he was standing there, and someone said he was 87, and I said, whoa, you don't look 87. And he said, yeah, you know why? And I said, why is that? And he said, one wife, no smoking, no drinking. So, so that's rules of life to live for right there, guys. But this congregation at Vinda, talking to their leaders and about what they do, they've planted 65 churches since they have been there. Their goal, this 87-year-old man said, my goal is that we have 100 before I pass. That's all they're focused on. And I got to talk to them about how they did it. And yeah, they live in a different world than we do, and they're able to do some things different. But they use Southern Africa Bible College to supply the preachers that they need to make these plants. There was a young man who was there who we became very close to, Stanley. And Stanley is close to graduation. He's already committed to go back to what he told me before we went late at night one night, because we're in the dorm with the kids. And late at night, I walked in his room, and we talked about going that week to Vinda. And he turned around and he looked at me with a big smile, and he said, you get to meet my people. Oh, sorry, I get emotional about this. But it was just an incredible trip that we did get to meet his people and interact with them and work with them. And talk to them about what they do, and they've got someone at their congregation who finds people who come from a common area, and then they send those people. It may be only 2 or 3 couples that they go, and they send them back to that place where they're from to begin a church, and they send one of these young graduates to go with them. And I said, well, how do you support that young preacher? And he said, well, quite honestly, he says, we only have 3 preachers out of the 65 congregations that are full-time supported by their congregation. The rest of them all work, and then they're supplemented by that congregation somewhat, but they have to work to be able to, and they preach as another part of their life along with that, the prominent part of their life. So it's just an amazing place. It's amazing to see what we can do with those. And back to South African Bible College itself, you stay in the dorms right there with the kids. And Kirk asked the question at the end, do you think we should go someplace with better accommodations? I can tell you, you can't interact with the kids and form the relationships that we have now with those kids without having been there. And being there in the dorm with them. And that was a great plan. Mary's right. The dorms are pretty simple. I can tell you the guys' rooms don't have any mirrors in them either, but I was kind of glad about that. But the trip was just a magnificent trip. Even down, I'm going to tell you this one last story. I was talking about how God just kept touching me and just leading me and showing me and providing for me the entire way through this entire trip. Just before we left to go, I've had the same Bible since I was baptized way back in 1985, December 5, 1985. It's got all my notes in it. I've had to have it recovered. I've got a little marker in here, a bookmark that Dustin made for me, my youngest made for me when he was about 5 years old. And I thought 2 weeks before we went that I had lost my Bible. And I was near tears over this thing. I thrashed this place thinking I'd left it up here on a Sunday night. Got everyone in the building, high alert, find Frank's Bible, please. It was a mess. I stopped on the way back to the office after not having been able to find it here and bought a new Thompson's Chain Reference Bible and told myself, okay, I just have to build and move forward from here. Went back to the office. That day I walked into our bedroom where I always keep my Bible, and my Bible was only about 14 inches from where I keep it all the time. But that's to say, I told Janine at that point, I said, I guess I could take it back. I got the receipt. And I said, no, I'll keep it because you never know. I might need it. This might happen again. I might need that Bible. And I looked at her and I said, I'm not taking that Bible back. God bought that Bible for a reason. I'm taking it with me. I took it with me. Saturday, that first day, when we put the program on, before we even started, I was going around meeting people, and I met a man named Dorian, and we hit it off immediately. lunchtime. I was in that conference room late for lunch, and so I didn't get to lunch till after everybody pretty much finished lunch because we stayed in there talking. They were so excited about the things we were talking about. I get to lunch, and I pulled a chair up next to Dorian, and I sat down with him, took my box lunch, and sat down over with him, and we continued our conversation we'd had earlier. And he told me, he says, I didn't have to. He said, I gave my Bible to someone who needed it. And he said, now I'm using, and he said, I bought a cheap Bible, but he said it fell apart in a hurry. So he said, now I'm using my daughter's Bible as he's doing these Bible studies with people. And I said, Dorian, hold on a second. I ran upstairs to my room. I got the Bible out. It's still in the box. I took it in the box even and brought it down, and I handed that to him, and he was in tears. God will use you in mighty ways, and he uses us when we throw ourselves before him. And we all know it. We've all been in really low troughs. We've all been in times of excitement. But it's times like this when you can make a contribution and you can help these kids and you can help the program and you can help the Lord's kingdom, that don't be like me. Don't take 13 years to step up. That's all.